Before the Enlightenment, most of the world's thought traditions, philosophical traditions, took it for granted that it is mind that creates the nervous system, creates its body. The assumption that the correlation is explained by inverting this causality arrow, by saying that it's the brain that creates the mind. It's given the scope of cultural history, it's a fairly recent assumption. And it's already being undone. Most mature and intelligent neuroscientists today would stay away from either direction in the arrow of causality. They would not say the brain creates the mind or the mind creates the brain. They would say the two are correlated, and that's an empirical fact. And what we have to do is map out that correlation, because that's what has practical applications. That's how you can design better neuroactive drugs. That's how you can improve neurosurgery. That's how you devise new treatments, is by understanding the correlation between the two. Now, correlation doesn't necessarily imply causation, but it often does. And there are three hypotheses here. One is the brain creates the mind. Nobody could ever explain how this could happen, not even in principle. The mind creates the brain, or the mind and the brain are both created by a third thing. In all three cases, you have the correlation, right? Under analytic idealism, you don't even come to this question. It's not like there is a deliberate creation by one party of the other party. One is just what the other looks like. The brain is simply what mental activity looks like when observed from the outside. So you don't even get to, oh, then mental activity creates the brain. Well, in a sense, yes, but it's not deliberate. It's not an act of creation. It's a spontaneous thing. The brain is what mental processes look like. It's the appearance of it. It's like asking, does combustion create flames? Well, flames are what combustion looks like, right? It's much more immediate and spontaneous than this talk of creation. So under analytic idealism, the brain is simply what the mind looks like. And all empirical evidence is consistent with it. You mess up with the brain, that's the appearance of a mental process messing up with another mental process. Now, on the dashboard, it looks like a scalpel cutting into a brain, or you taking a pill that messes up with your conscious inner life, like an antidepressant or a psychedelic. All these material processes are the appearances of causal mental chains from mind to mind, because mind is all that exists under analytic idealism. Under analytic idealism, matter is always, in all cases, without exception, without a single exception, matter is always what mind looks like. The variety of matter represents the appearance of the variety of mental states and mental dynamics. So the brain is what your mental inner life looks like. The inanimate universe is what the mental inner life of mind at large looks like. Matter is always what mental states look like under analytic idealism. Now, does the physicist need to believe it? Not really. The physicist works in the realm of appearances, because that's what we can observe empirically. Now, we are pilots that were born in an airplane dashboard, in an airplane cockpit, without windows, only with a dashboard. We have always only flown by instruments, which is possible. Pilots can fly by instruments alone. They don't need a transparent window to see what's going on. The dashboard is enough. So we were born in that cockpit without windows. All we have ever had was the dashboard. So we take the dashboard for the sky. It's an understandable mistake. It is a mistake, but it's a forgivable one. All we have had was a dashboard, so we mistake reality for the dashboard. We think the dashboard is the sky, is the reality outside. That's the dilemma of the physicist. The physicist only has the dashboard. In other words, the material or physical universe. And they find correlations between the movement of the dials in the dashboard. If one dial goes this way, another goes that way. And the physicist will say, well, this dial movement caused the other dial movement. No, both movements were caused by a mental state behind, outside the airplane, behind the dashboard. But it works as though one dial caused the other. And we can create all of our physical theories that way. by pretending that causality is a dashboard thing. It's okay, so long as you don't start arriving at metaphysical conclusions because of that. Appearances arise when there is a boundary between the observer and the observed. If they are not distinct, there are no appearances, because appearances are what something looks like from the outside. For there to be an outside, there has to be a division, a boundary between the inside and the outside. So the observer looks from the outside, and the observed exists in the inside, right? So how do appearances arise? When this boundary arises, when there can be one mind on one side of the boundary, or one segment of a mind on one side of the boundary, and another segment of a mind on the other side of the boundary. Now we have one observing the other from the outside being determined by that boundary. That boundary is a dissociative boundary, which is how mental contents can split up seemingly from one another, is through dissociation. That's a condition known in psychiatry. We know it happens in mental space. Analytic idealism simply extrapolates that to the whole of nature, because the whole of nature is mental under analytic idealism. So why are there appearances? Well, because there is dissociation. I am dissociated from you by two dissociative boundaries. Yours, the one that separates you from the world around you, and mine, the one that separates me from the world around me. So if I would like to observe your thoughts, imagine that your skull were transparent, or that a neurosurgeon came here and cracked your skull open and did it like this, so I could see your brain and its brain activity. I would be observing it from the outside, because there are two dissociative boundaries between me and your thoughts. And therefore, your thoughts will appear to me as a brain and brain activity. But from your own point of view, your thoughts appear to you as thoughts, as ideas, emotions, intuitions, fantasies, perceptions, all kinds of mental qualities. To me, they will appear as contents of perception. In other words, representations on my dashboard. Dashboards only exist because we can separate the airplane from the sky. There's an airplane skin, an aluminum skin, that allows us to say there is an outside from the perspective of the pilot. The same thing from matter. Matter is how mental states appear to an observer on the outside, that outside being determined by a dissociative boundary. So once you have a dissociative boundary, matter appears spontaneously. It's simply how one thing looks like to another from across a dissociative boundary.